Week 8 showed that the Washington Commanders can hang, but they lack the discipline to really compete against the elite teams in the NFL. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, right here with you 5 days a week. And you can also find me writing about the Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. You can follow me on X at DHarrison82. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today. To the everydayers, those of you who come through for every single episode, a special thank you especially goes out to you for coming through for yet another one. Coming up on today's episode, we are going to dive into some fan questions about the team's direction at 3 and 5 and compare my film grades versus PFF's analytics. But first, why the Commanders failed to capitalize on early opportunities against the Kansas City Chiefs. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. So we already know what happened. 28-7, Washington Commanders fall to the Kansas City Chiefs. They fall to 3 and 5 in week 8, coming in week 9 now, Seattle Seahawks. But in order to really kind of establish what needs to happen for week 9, diving in a little bit to what happened, not what happened, but why it happened in week 8, because it really wasn't just a loss. It wasn't just another game lost, generally speaking it is. But when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, really, it's discipline, and it's the failure to take advantage of critical opportunities. Of course, head coach Dan Quinn, that's his overall diagnosis of the game as well from his press conference at the day after the game on Tuesday. He said, quote, keep coming back to the same moment of the missed opportunities. Missed 3 in the first half. That's the difference between going into half tied or going into the half with the lead. We have to take advantage of our opportunities. That's really the message, end quote. And it's not only taking advantage of opportunities, but it's also not giving your opponent new opportunities to take advantage of you. That I think really gets down to the nuts and bolts of what happened in this game against Kansas City Chiefs. And that's where this Washington Commanders team honestly needs to just look in the mirror, have that reality check, and understand that you control your destiny more than your opponent controls your destiny. Dr. Wonderful, that's what we're diving into in this episode. Dr. Wonderful asked, so a little bit of a combined deep dive into the game, mailbag, because of the condensed week, because the game was on Monday. Next episode here is going to be crossover Thursday, so we're going to kind of combine mailbag with the deep dive, right? So here's how we're going to do is Dr. Wonderful came through and asked how the Commanders are missing on these opportunities that we just talked about, that Dan Quinn talked about. And in the first half, it clearly showed 0 points off 2 Patrick Mahomes interceptions. The perfect example, Patrick Mahomes, never in the history of Patrick Mahomes had he ever thrown 2 interceptions to start a game. And that's exactly what the Washington Commanders defense got against them. And the Commanders offense turned it into absolutely nothing. Opening drive interception ended near the red zone. The Washington Commanders opening drive interception, I should say, came near the end zone. Deebo Samuel deflection. So you're not taking advantage of the own opportunities that you created. Marcus Mariota, clean pocket, good protection on that drive by the offensive line. Just an execution of failure, right? So that's one opportunity that you're not taking advantage of, to answer Dr. Wonderful's question. Then you got the failed 4th downs, the 4th and 1 incompletion. Marcus Mariota chalked that up to a miscommunication. Listen, I know that not all of you listen to every single episode, but I'm going to say that I went pretty deep on that 4th and 1 decision on yesterday's episode. So I'm going to kind of leave it there. So if you want to get my full thoughts on that 4th and 1 decision, go back to the last episode after you finish this episode. You'll get my full thoughts there, because I just don't want to rehash it here. One, I'm in a pretty good mood today. It's kind of cold outside, but I'm in a pretty good mood, and I don't want to ruin that. You have the 4th and 6 failure as well. DQ stressed the need to execute these aggressive calls, right? It's one thing to be aggressive, but you've also got to execute them properly. So there's more missed opportunities that, again, so you're giving away at least 9 points in those situations in theory. And there's no guarantee the kick gets made, you know what I mean? Especially with a new kicker coming in, hours before the game. But that's 9 points minimum that you're wasting, plus the interceptions on top of it. So you just kind of compound all of those mistakes. And that's where you kind of look at this first half. First half of the Washington Commanders offense generated 194 yards of total offense, but only 7 points. Second half, 66 net yards for the Washington Commanders offense, 0 points. It just kind of tells the tale. It's not just a tale of two halves. It's a tale of one team taking advantage of opportunities more than the other team. because in the second half, the Washington Commanders defense also offered up some more opportunities for the Kansas City Chiefs to take hold of the game, and it all comes down to discipline. When you look back at the film and you look back at the game flow, there's two really bad penalties. One of them I'll categorize as darn near catastrophic. The other one a little bit less just because of the game flow. And then there's an absolutely critical mistake on an opportunity to take the ball away from the Kansas City Chiefs. First play we're going to talk about, Quan Martin's unnecessary roughness penalty. And before we get into this, I've seen comments like, oh, football is soft, make a flag football. I got it. And I don't necessarily disagree with you, okay? Obviously, when I was playing football, and I didn't play in the NFL, but when I was playing football, the game was a lot more physical. There was a lot more that was allowed then than there is now. I get it. But at the end of the day, you're in the industry you're in. And these players know the industry they're in. They have to play within those industries. You just have to. If you don't like it, that's for future CBAs. That's for future conversations. But you got to play the game within the boundaries of the game today, whether you like it or not. Quan Martin's unnecessary roughness turns a 3rd and 5 into a 1st and 10. Now, there's no guarantee that even on 3rd and 5 you're getting off the field. But you have a much better opportunity getting off the field on 3rd and 5 than you do on 1st and 10 with the offense gaining 15 yards because of your penalty. Kansas City scores a touchdown 5 plays later. So that's a touchdown directly attributed, like I said, to a penalty. Johnny Newton, later in the game, roughing the passer, wipes out a sack, gives Kansas City an automatic 1st down. Now, they don't end up scoring on that drive. It's already 28-7. But what you end up doing is, again, you give the offense a new set of downs. They bleed even more time off the clock. Given what the offense was doing, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they would have mounted this comeback and done all this stuff. But, again, the game is all about opportunities. And because of that lack of discipline, and, again, it's not about what should, it's about what is. Johnny Newton knows the rules. You know what you can and can't do. You have to play within those rules. You can't complain about them. Like the time to complain about them is not Monday night in the midst of the action. That's off season, that's CBA, that's NFLPA, whatever, but it's not Monday night in the middle of the action. You have to understand the rules. You give them more time to bleed more clock, and it just further, I should say, eliminates your opportunity to win that game. Because again, by that time, I'm not going to sit here and say that penalty contributed directly to the loss, but it's a play that it just shows that lack of discipline in the moment. You got to control those things. You have some scramble breakdowns. Marcus Mariota. Patrick Mahomes is running around behind the line of scrimmage, and you have discipline breakdowns and coverage that lead to big gains. Travis Kelce on a 38-yarder. Again, eye discipline. You have the missed turnover opportunity on Kansas City's second touchdown drive of the game, of the second half, rather, that made it 21-7. It's 14-7. Darnell Savage forces a fumble against Rashee Rice near the Washington 25 in scoring range. Marshon Lattimore, you have the opportunity to fall on it, or you can try to pick it up. He tries to pick it up. You're going for the biggest play instead of the play you need to make. Rashee Rice gets the ball back. The Kansas City Chiefs hold it. 4 plays later, they score a touchdown. It's 28-7, or it's 21-7 at that point now. Again, opportunity to get the ball back, keep it a 1-score game, and you miss it because of a lack of discipline. Every fumble drill you see, players get on the ball. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Get on the stinking ball. So discipline. Looking at some film grades, I broke down the film. I gave Chris Paul an A. I'm going to be honest, it's probably more like a B+. His run blocking wasn't amazing. The entire run blocking for the offensive line wasn't amazing, but Chris definitely wasn't necessarily the problem. Gave up 0 pressures overall in pass pro, though, so that's why I gave him such a high grade. Jeremy McNichols also got a high grade for me. Want to see more Jeremy McNichols moving forward. He was the most effective running back, certainly most effective, one of the most effective weapons, if not the most effective weapon outside of Terry McLaurin, who was limited due to coming back from that injury. Led the team in receiving. He also did allow a sack, though, so not perfect, but certainly a good game from Jeremy McNichols and Marshon Lattimore. Huge bounce-back game for him. Had that interception early in the game, was playing in tight coverage. Again, missed the fumble recovery, so certainly not perfect, but overall pretty good game in coverage. Bottom 3 guys, Marcus Mariota, 2 interceptions. Look, the one interception is not his fault, and the other one is in garbage time. 22 seconds left in the game, so it's really hard, but just did not really bring the juice to the offense that you really needed to see in place of Jayden Daniels. Deebo Samuel coming back off the heel. Again, the deflection off of his hands for the first interception of the game in scoring position really just kind of wiped out all the momentum they had built up to that point. Ended up with 3 catches for 11 yards. Just not a great day for him. And then defensive end Preston Smith. Look, I don't know what the solution is on the edge for the Washington Commanders, but it's not Preston Smith. 0 stats recorded on 21 snaps. They needed, some of that veteran savvy out of him. They just did not get it. So understanding the team's collective shortcomings is absolutely important for moving forward. But let's compare our specific grades from the tape further and look at how they matched up against analytical sites like Pro Football Focus, what it says about the overall performance of the team moving forward here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Mazda, and Mazda crafts cars for those who do simply more than move. Watching the Washington Commanders Monday night, you saw flashes of potential, but also you saw critical moments where the details weren't quite right. A missed block here, slight miscommunication there, failure to capitalize. Those details obviously and absolutely matter. Athletes sweat all those details, so trust me, they're identifying them, they're working on them, they're just as frustrated as we are. They're the ones that are going to be able to fix them, though, not you and I. From footwork to breath work, Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every single model. It's all about making everyday drives feel like anything but through smooth handling and intuitive controls that just work when you need them to, something the Commanders' offense and defense need to desperately get on the same page of. Mazda delivers confidence, especially with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, letting you drive with assurance through almost any season. Like the best players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. With Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Game Time. The NFL season is rolling through the midway mark this weekend, and after a tough loss like the one the Commanders suffered in Week 8, sometimes you just got to be in the stadium to feel the energy coming into Week 9 and see what it really is about with your team live and in person. Also be there to help lift them up, support them, and make sure that you get loud and not help those Seattle Seahawks offense get some quiet moments while they're trying to operate. Tickets can getting tickets can be a hassle though, right? Everybody's been through it, whether it's price changes, whether it's lines, whether it's queues, and then all of a sudden you're kicked out. It's always frustrating to try to get those. That's why I use Game Time whenever I need tickets for any event, because they make it easy. They have the best price, and you get the all-inclusive price right there before you even get to checkout. So there's no surprises, and you can see your seat before you make your purchase. So take the hassle out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. After getting the opportunity to dive into the film from the Washington Commanders Week 8 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously there's some struggles, but I also looked over at PFF, and I kind of thought this might be a little bit of a fun exercise, kind of compare what I see, what I thought, what I think, compared to what PFF's numbers and analytics and all that kind of show, and where they meet, but also where they diverge, and maybe see if we can just put a little bit of a different view on things. So we're going to get in on that, but let's first start diving into this mailbag a little bit. Defensive collapse. So Insiders Paul and Tia both came through with questions about the defensive collapse, asking specifically, was it adjustments? Was it fatigue? And I think it was a little bit of both, but not physical fatigue. I think it was mental fatigue. I think, the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely came out with a game plan in the second half. They attacked the left and the right side of the Washington Commanders defense more than they did in the first half, which I think was very deliberate. We talked about it leading into the game. We've been talking about it all season long. The Washington Commanders right now just have no edge presence, right? They don't set the edge. They don't contain. They don't do any of those things that you need to in a solid defense, and that's a problem. And the Kansas City Chiefs didn't really take advantage of that in the first half as well, but in the second half, they brought out a few different designs. They did it a little bit of a different way, and they were able to do that. And what that ended up doing was spreading the defense out more. Then they were able to take advantage up the middle and really got more runs, positive runs, successful runs against the middle of the Washington Commanders defense than I feel like we've seen all season long. And that is troubling, because if that's a trend that starts to get taken advantage of, well, then you basically just have no strength of a defense as the Washington Commanders outside of your pass rush numbers, which continue to be pretty good, but the quality of them, right, as far as how much they're impacting the game flow, just is not there from that standpoint. As far as the fatigue, like I said, I think it's more mental, right? We talked about the discipline issues in the first segment, really dove deep into that on the game film. I think that's really where the fatigue came. I don't think it was a physical fatigue, some questions about age and all that stuff. I think it's just mental stamina. Competitive stamina, right? Those are all big things in the scouting world. You have the penalties, but then you also have the execution on the scramble drills. You have a Mikey Sanderson busted coverage that leads to a near 30-yard gain, the missed recovery, right? All those things. Some coverage, breakdowns. Mikey Sanderson graded out by PFF at a 48.9 coverage grade, not good. Darnell Savage, 42.4, not good. So yes, fatigue, but not in the physical sense, more so in the mental sense. Insider Michael wanted to come through and ask about the pass rush versus secondary imbalance, wondering if the pass rush is putting too much strain on the secondary. So the Washington Commanders are top 10 in sack rate, but they have a poor pass defense. Jacob Martin for the second straight week had a really good game, 67.7 pass rushing grade, which isn't elite, but it's very, very good. And I think that he's been a little bit of a pleasant surprise through all this, although it's kind of hard to really notice it if you're looking from the outside in because of the losing, right? It's hard to notice those kinds of things, but that's why I'm here. I watch every single player, and I watch through those lenses of what can we pull out of this. Inconsistent pressure opposite him doesn't really stress the coverage, right? So Preston Smith, again, got a D overall from me, got a fairly similar grade from PFF. And then the busted coverages. Pressure is supposed to help coverage. You know what I mean? Again, I think the biggest thing is like a lot of these pressures coming on like first down, second down. They're not necessarily coming on third down to like kill a drive. And that's kind of part of it. There's a lot of quantity there. It's the quality of it that needs to improve. Then we also have this conversation I wanted to turn to. So our PFF versus my grades. And I'm not, here to say like I'm better or smarter than Pro Football Focus or anything like that. And I know there's, conversations on PFF grades. I don't particularly lean on PFF grades too strongly, but I think they are a good tool to kind of help elevate conversations. Again, I gave Chris Paul an A. I kind of think it's a little bit high. I don't do minuses. I don't do pluses. I think if I did, I probably would give him a B plus because pass pro, he was great. Right. And I think that initially, like, that's kind of like the first thing you want to do is protect your quarterback. Run blocking, he wasn't as great. Notice a little bit of flaws there. PFF gave him a 56 overall run blocking grade, which isn't great. Kind of matches that. So, maybe again, like B plus level. If you were to try to argue me into a B, I might even, kind of cave on that and just go with a straight B. But either way, Chris Paul, certainly a decent game, if not really good. Mikey Sanders still, I gave him a C. PFF came through with a 48.9. Overall grade was actually lower, so I'm actually a little bit higher on Mikey Sanders still. So for those of you who apparently think that I'm a Mikey Sanders still hater, first of all, I'm not. He's a good dude. But second of all, PFF actually gave him a worse grade than I did. So, I don't know, for whatever that's worth. So we agree that he didn't have a great game either way, but PFF was a little bit lower on him. Darnell Savage, overall, I gave him a B. Again, if I did minuses and pluses, probably would be more of a C plus. Gave him a B. PFF basically gave him an F, 39.1 defensive grade. So according to PFF, I'm way too nice to Darnell Savage. Did have the forced fumble, which I think, maybe I weigh a little bit heavier than PFF does. Frankie Louvu, I gave him a B. PFF gave him a 49.4. Not great. He had some tackles versus the run for his defensive grade. And I think the way that opponents attack him, maybe I'm giving a little bit too much credit for the way opponents are coming after him and trying to wipe him out of game plans. But either way, PFF certainly not as friendly to Frankie Louvu in their grading as I was. Another mailbag one real quick. Running game woes. Only 60 yards on the ground. Poor PFF grades. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, 59.3 overall. I gave him a C. The line was sub 65 run blocking overall. And again, a lot of the offensive linemen got C's for me in this game as well. DQ stress execution, that's really kind of the biggest part of this. You would also love to look at the Laramie Tunsil injury factor, but honestly, Brandon Coleman didn't do all that bad, didn't do bad at all, replacing Laramie Tunsil, and did give up 3 pressures and he gave up 1 sack. But, overall, especially in the run game, like wasn't really a liability per se. So I don't even think that necessarily losing Laramie Tunsil had a big part to it. I think, again, that part of it is a little bit of the mentality of it. You got to go out there. And I will say, and I'll say this with a caveat, I have not gotten to go dive back into all of the Jacory Croskey-Merritt runs yet. Jacory has always been a little bit of a hesitant runner, like not like hesitant as in like weary, but like, let me find my spot and then boom, hit it. He has always done a little bit of dancing behind the line of scrimmage, but I feel like recently we're seeing more of it. And that speaks to lack of trust, lack of confidence. And certainly if your running back is not necessarily committing to the hole or committing to the line as quickly as you want him to, that's going to be a problem. And I go back to the conversations every day. As you'll remember, I think this team is putting too much on him right now as the primary back. I think you need more Jacory Croskey or more Jeremy McNichols in there. At this point, actually, I almost think like you need to start Jeremy McNichols, but then you also need more Chris Rodriguez in there. Got 1 carry against Kansas City Chiefs. I think you got to get these guys involved, get the rotation going to get that better, right? So analyzing the game tape and grades, obviously it's an important part of the conversation, but you guys have more questions that we're going to get to here before we wrap up today's episode, a crossover deep dive and mailbag episode coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at One Peloton.
All right, the Washington Commanders are 3-5 entering week 9. We got some questions from Commanders fans, Locked On Commanders insiders coming through every week with the mailbag questions. So let's address as many of these as we can. We got some questions from insiders, Michael and Doug, asking about overall health, Jayden Daniels' return. So Dan Quinn has been speaking pretty positively early this week about Jayden Daniels getting back to practice. We are scheduled to hear from Jayden on Wednesday evening. So that's a good sign. It's not a definitive sign. It doesn't guarantee that he's going to play. But teams are instructed to put the anticipated starting quarterback available on Wednesday afternoon. So, take that for what it's worth, but it's not worth like if you need $100 to pay the light bill, it's about a 20, right? It's like a $20 bill. So doesn't mean we're all the way there, but it is a crucial step. And obviously, Thursday we'll hear from Dan Quinn before practice Wednesday. We'll hear from Cliff Kingsbury before practice on Thursday. And I'm sure both men will be asked about Jayden as well. Terry McLaurin, a little bit more of a day-to-day vibe with him on that quad. He himself told us after the game that he had to wake up, Tuesday morning, kind of see how it felt. We don't know what the results of that were, whether or not Terry McLaurin's quad saw its own shadow or not, and whether or not we're going to continue to be without him moving forward. We'll see. Hopefully, he'll be able to be out there and be available. Michael and Doug also want to know about turning it around. What's the biggest area to fix? And can the season be saved? Yeah, the season can absolutely be saved. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy. I'm not going to tell you it's even going to happen per se. But you got 3 teams coming up before the bye. Obviously, the Seattle Seahawks this weekend, Sunday Night Football, Detroit Lions after that at home, and then we're off to Spain against Miami Dolphins. All 3 teams can be beaten. All 3 teams can be defeated. None of them are undefeated or undefeatable, impervious to being defeated. So if the Commanders can fix some of the things that we've talked about here, and that's a big if because we've been talking about them, if potentially, maybe if they fix them all season long, it seems. But can it be done? Sure. And if they do it, they enter the bye 6-5. If you enter the bye 6-5, then you're in a decent position. You've got Denver, you've got Minnesota, you've got those 4 games at the end of it, all coming up. You have the opportunity to make some moves. Again, I think the projection I laid out before the season was like a 10-win situation. If you enter the bye 6-5 record, then 10 wins certainly is within reach. If you enter the bye 5-6 by losing one of these next 3 games, or losing one of these next 3 games, obviously you're not nearly as happy as it is. So again, the margin for error obviously is low. Zach Ertz said the clock is ticking. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So is it salvageable? Absolutely. What's the biggest fix? To me, again, discipline. Discipline. It just boils on discipline, man. Play your assignment. Don't try to be a hero. Play your assignment. Don't commit the stupid penalty. Play football, man. Trade deadline questions, rebuilding questions. Insiders TJ and Roderick are wondering about the trade deadline, potential rebuilds. This team has been in a rebuild mode. I think they'd like to say reloading, but we all, the layman term for that is rebuilding. They'll continue to be rebuilding. Even after the season, even if the season was going well, guys, even if this team was 5-3 right now instead of 3-5, that's still part of the process because you're trying to overhaul an entire roster from what it was when you inherited it to what you wanted to be moving down. So that really doesn't change. The question is, do they become sellers at the trade deadline? If they lose to the Seattle Seahawks, I think there's a higher chance that you maybe see some players traded. If they beat the Seattle Seahawks, I don't think that they make any trades. I'm not sure that they trade for anybody either. I would love, the sexiness of bringing Brian Thomas Jr. in from Jacksonville. Liam Cohen, the head coach of the Jaguars, says that they're not trading him, but I think he's full of doo-doo. I think he's just trying to cover up for the report. But I don't know that it's realistic. It's more of a pipe dream than a realistic expectation. And then finally, insider TJ asked about the 4th down challenge rule. So there was the play early in the game, Zach Ertz, to everybody except for the people running the ball spotting technology in the stadium, seemed to think that the spot was bad. That Zach Ertz actually got the first down, kind of reminiscent of the Steelers game last year. Dan, they did the virtual measurement, came up, I think, like 5 inches short, something like that. Dan Quinn did not throw a red challenge flag. DQ did explain to us on Monday that when those situations happen, not only do they virtually measure the football, they also automatically review the spot of the ball, which is why it took as long as it did. Like, everybody in the stadium was like, this is a virtual measurement. Why is this taking so long? It's because they were actively reviewing the spot of the ball as well. So the spot of the ball did get reviewed. Again, I still disagree with the spot of the ball, but it did get reviewed, which is why there's no challenge from Dan Quinn. And then finally, frustrating losses are always are bad. You know what I mean? They're even worse when you look at it and you can actually quantifiably say you gave the game away. Again, the unnecessary roughness that extends the drive, the lack of the fumble recovery, and the inefficiency on the 4th down plays, or the bad play calling on 4th down, at least in one instance, according to me, make them a little bit more frustrating. But again, they are also signs that you're right there. This team is, and I don't even joke about this, this team is 7 plays away from beating the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, one of the best teams in the NFL. If that happens, we're waking up Tuesday to a much different tone and a much different conversation heading into this game against Seattle. The fact that it could have happened, however, should hopefully give you a little bit of hope coming for Sunday night. Look, if you want to sit on the side of like, I'm a root for my team, but I'm not going to buy into the juice or buy into the Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid until the time comes, I do not blame you whatsoever. But hopefully I can give you just a little bit of information on why the Kool-Aid might get stirred this weekend, including potentially, hopefully, maybe, Jayden Daniels coming back to help fire up that offense. It's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, crossover Thursday. Corbin of Locked On Seahawks and I are going to talk about this weekend's matchup. So make sure you come back for that. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you can text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders for your second listening, a double dose of Locked On NFL, where I do know for sure their names, Tyler Rowland and Tony Wiggins, in the morning, in the afternoon. Wednesday afternoon, actually, I'm with Tony, so make sure you go through this afternoon, and definitely make sure you check out Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get this podcast. To the everydayers, I see you every day, appreciate you every day, and I thank you specifically for coming through yet again today. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.